Welcome to the Heart and Soul podcast, a space where words, people, and stories matter. I'm really glad you're here. Tonight, we are in the Heart and Soul on the Road room. I know, sounds like an oxymoron, but the idea is that when we are in this room, it was based on my 64 More interview project, where I traveled across America and Ireland to interview interesting people with unique life wisdoms. So when we gather in this room, we are virtually traveling to meet people. And tonight you're going to meet and get to talk to, ask questions of two talented young people who are making an impact in the world of films. But first, I want to share some fun young filmmaker trivia. I have to start with one of the most famous filmmakers of ever, Steven Spielberg. Here's the trivia. He was rejected from film school multiple times. Can you imagine how embarrassed those professors are now in hindsight? Yet by his early 20s, he was directing episodes for Universal Studios, and he made Jaws, which basically invented the summer blockbuster. Xavier Dolan presented his first film, I Killed My Mother. No comments, please. He presented it at Cannes when he was just 20 years old, and it got an 8-minute standing ovation. Not bad for a 20-year-old. Orson Welles made Citizen Kane at age 25, and that has often been described as the greatest film ever made. Ryan Coogler was only 29 when he directed Creed, reviving a legendary franchise of Rocky. And just a couple of years later, he was back at it with the Black Panther. Robert Rodriguez. This is my favorite trivia for the night. Robert Rodriguez made El Mariachi, the movie, for about $7,000. Not too bad, right? But he funded it partially by participating in medical experiments. I'm sorry.
What
That
does
just
that
makes
even
me
mean?
That's just every time I read that, it's like, okay, take my blood. I need $7,000 to make my movie, right? Anyway.
Yeah.
But it launched his Hollywood career. Director Greta Gerwig, which a lot of you may know for different reasons. She did the Barbie movie, but she made Lady Bird, which was one of my favorite movies in that season, when she was in her young 30s. And she became only the 5th woman ever nominated for Best Director at the Oscars. And then, for about relative to tonight's podcast, Taika Waititi, and I don't know this person, but she was nominated for an Oscar for a short film. And before she became a major Hollywood director, which obviously proved the idea that short films can be serious launch pads for Hollywood careers. And so with that, I want to start tonight's podcast by talking about a national filmmaking phenomenon called the 48-Hour Film Project. If you've never heard of it, you're not alone. There are a lot of people who have not, but it is a worldwide project, and it happens on a 48-hour period. So basically, a team of filmmakers will come together. There are 100 cities around the world that participate. They don't all do it on the same weekend, but wherever they're participating on that weekend, they come together on a Friday night, teams of filmmakers, and then each filmmaking team draws a movie genre out of a hat and receives the required elements for their film. And then it's off to the races, writing, shooting, and editing, and doing whatever it takes to submit their short film by Sunday night. Talk about pandemonium. I cannot even imagine. The payoff is that all the films get screened at theaters in their cities where they're created. And then they're judged by local judges in more than a dozen categories, including Best Acting and Best Directing and the top prize Best Film. Then the best film winner in each city screens at the 48-Hour Film Project annual international festival that they called Filmapalooza. Love that title. This year was in Lisbon, Portugal. It's attended by filmmakers from around the world. And at this year's recent ceremonies, a film titled Something There, created by a team from Buffalo named 38 Gigabytes, was nominated for and won awards for Best Acting, Best Writing, and Best Use of a Genre. Over 3,500 films from all over the world. This one was chosen as the best. And now, because of those awards, this film is headed to the Cannes Film Festival Short Film Corner. Unbelievable. Just I'm so excited to even talk about this film because it was made here in Buffalo. But I'm even more excited because tonight we have the man who was behind and in front of this film, Buffalo's own Cameron Garrity. Cam, welcome to Heart and Soul.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Full
It's absolute
disclosure,
pleasure.
Cam and I first met when you were a long teenager, just before about 18, 19.
19. Yep.
Your mom connected us. I met her at a book signing and she connected us. And when I met you, you were determined to have a career in storytelling through puppets. So, can you tell us a little bit about what started that journey from hand sewing your own puppets through to creating an award winning film about someone who actually plays a puppet that's going to go to con?
Happy to. Well, the my story with puppetry goes back long before I was ever even able to hold a needle and thread. It started where I think most children's exposure to puppets start, at least if you were born after 1970, is Sesame Street. And I was like every other kid growing up in the early 90s. I was watching Sesame Street and at my grandparents' house, The Muppet Show and Muppet Babies, to say nothing of Lamb Chop and Zaboomafoo and like all those great, the 90s was a haven, a bastion for television puppetry. And I absorbed all of that. There was something so magical and alluring to that craft, especially the puppet's ability to coexist in a space with us. You know, if you watch a Pixar movie or a Disney movie, you kind of know that that exists in some kind of different realm. If Woody was ever on the Today Show or presenting an Oscar or an award at the Oscars or the Emmys or something, you would know like, oh, this was pre-done, this was pre-taped. But when Kermit the Frog or Big Bird show up somewhere,
Miss Piggy.
exactly, it's them, and there's something extra visceral and palpable and intoxicating to me about that. So as I grew up, learned more and more about how this world was made, who the key players were, of course, not only learning about Jim Henson and Frank Oz, but people like Carol Spinney, who performed Big Bird and Oscar, who is a giant, a legend in my mind, especially growing up, and people like Jerry Jewell, who was Jim Henson's writer through just about everything, and Don Celine and Bonnie Erickson, the Puppet Builders, and this larger community of artists, because that's really what the Muppets were. They were the Henson associates creating this thing, and it's been a lovely privilege and honor to find Buffalo talents here that we could kind of have our own version of that and create work such as something there.
When I first met your mom and the way she introduced me to you, not in person, but told your story, was that you had a condition that caused you to have surgeries three, four, five, six times a year.
Mhm.
And so that kind of short circuited your childhood. And
It did, yeah.
I would assume that your connection to the Muppets and becoming so involved with them, as like you said, it felt magical, it felt real, it felt really something. It had to do with the fact that you weren't the kid who was in the middle of the play yard every day. You had a different childhood growing up.
That's certainly right. And the Muppets were a real escape for me. And I've probably said it in our talks back years ago, but to be able to watch a movie like the Muppet movie and feel like you're trekking across the country in a Studebaker and singing the songs and flying in hot air balloons and all the other things that they do in those films, it was an escape. And I think because it wasn't for me just about a love of the characters, it was a love and an interest in the makers who made it all happen. It was like I you could equate it to, oh, I'm not just obsessed with the work of Impressionist paintings. I'm also going to learn everything about Monet and Renoir and all of their contemporaries, and it was able to become that for me as well.
The thing I want people to make sure that people understand is not only have you become a filmmaker, but before all of that, before the big picture, you were sitting in your home, in a studio, wherever you could find the time, with a lot of bolts of fabric of all kinds of furry, fluffy stuff and some needles and thread and making your own puppets. Like, how did you, was your mom a seamstress? How did you learn to make, and they weren't just, if I sewed them, you wouldn't know what they were. When Cam sewed them, they looked like something that belonged on Sesame Street. Cam, how did you learn that?
So it was mostly being self-taught, and in the early 2010s, that meant either, just studying the coffee table books and trying to figure out how did those seams come together. I was able to Google some sewing patterns and other things, and there was a small handful of websites that had downloadable patterns, which was
Wow.
a huge gift. And it felt like Christmas morning when, my mom would let me borrow her credit card and pay, $15 to be able to download a pattern to show how to make something that was kind of the shape of Bert and Ernie,
Right.
and so I was able to do that. I also, we had this, he became an early mentor of mine, a man named Jim Minky, and we always knew him as Jim from church because our family, we would go to the same mass that he often did, the 7 o'clock over at St. John's in Kenmore. And we always just knew him as he was always lecturing at mass. When the sermon was boring, he would trim his fingernails. He was a real character of a person. And years into knowing him, at one point he found out that I was interested in puppets. For all I know, I had brought a puppet to church or to, had it in the car afterwards or something. And he said, "Oh, I'm a puppeteer too." And especially if someone at church tells you a puppeteer, that could sometimes be a little bit of a red flag, with all due love to our church puppeteers. Um, but we said like, "Oh, tell us more." And he talked about going to Puppetry of America festivals and working at Fantasy Island, our local amusement park, doing story times and shootout shows. And he just had this incredible storied career, and he gave me all sorts of fabrics and patterns and other things, and really became an early person in person to be able to say like, yeah, this is accessible. Like you have to work really hard at it, but there can be a future to this.
Was he the first person to tell you that, Cam?
Uh, I had tremendous art teachers growing up, who certainly had that kind of support. And, my parents were also very, very supportive, like tremendously so. You've met both of my parents. And I have such a wonderful support system in them. And it always helps to hear it from someone else and to know someone. Jim had literally performed his marionettes on the Carson show, so it
Wow.
was just this like, wow, and he's sitting 3 feet away from us kind of thing. And we've known him for years without knowing this and about him. And so all those things together was really, was encouraging. And and even though it felt far away, especially at that time, it felt more far away because of my physical and health hurdles versus it being a reality.
Potential, yeah, the potential. And just to be clear, when I met you, and I'm sure you did have advanced since then, this sewing was not on a machine.
Mm.
Cam would sit at a table with a needle and thread, and he was sewing these things by hand, and they were just remarkable. And we did an interview, and in those days, I didn't have my own camera, so we took still pictures and then made them into the video. But there's one where Cam brings Kermit over, his version of Kermit over, and talks to me. And I swear to you, 30 seconds into this thing, I'm talking to Kermit. Cam is nowhere in the picture with me, not in the video, but just I really felt like I was talking to Kermit. So his puppets not only were beautifully done, but his ability to magically recede from them and make you feel as if they were actually people, characters, think someone you can relate to. And so he's just magical at what he does. But what I'd love for you to share in a, 30-second or whatever, however you want to put it together, one of the stories you told, you got to go to Sesame Street. And
Mhm.
how old were you and how did that happen? And what would that, it had to be the dream of a lifetime. I would have been so excited.
It was incredible, and it was incredible for a number of reasons that almost had nothing to do with Sesame Street,
Really?
which is kind of fun. Yeah, and so I've been lucky enough to go twice. The first time was would have been shortly after I first met you, but before that interview you just mentioned. And so that was 2011. So I was just 20 years old. And I had gotten an invitation. I had become friends with some Muppet performers on Facebook, and we struck up um, a good rapport, and they invited me to go and visit the set. And at that time in particular, it was just so overwhelming and um, just surreal to walk into that space that you're walking into for the first time, and somehow you've been there, every day of your life.
Was it
Um,
was it really different? Did it feel, because what you see on TV is never what's really going on the set. Was it
Yes, except I had grown up watching Sesame Street documentaries about how they made it.
so you
So
understand?
again, it was just as exciting for me to see the behind the scenes
Got it.
players as it was to see, like, I never had the, forgive me, but like the Santa isn't real moment of it all. Like it was always packaged as one ecosystem. And so it was fascinating to see. The biggest like aha moment for me when I walked in was just the fact, and this is so stupid, but was the fact that they were doing something new there. Um, like there was a part of me that expected to walk in and see them filming Rubber Ducky for the millionth time,
Oh,
or
wow.
or a scene that I had already seen. So to go in and be like, oh, they're creating something that, like, this is the first time anybody is seeing it,
New content. Yeah.
was just like, like I said, I don't know why that didn't dawn on me, but it didn't dawn on me. Um, and while I was there, one of the things that really stuck out was the person who had invited me is a mentor of mine named Pam Arciero, and she runs the National Puppetry Conference at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center,
Nice.
which has been in operation for I should say the Puppetry Conference has been around for 35 or 36 years now. It was founded shortly after Jim Henson's passing, and um, as a way to train up the next generation of puppeteers, and
Mhm.
specifically puppeteers in the theater space. So it's a lot of devised work. It's the things that then end up on Broadway or just off Broadway, or in these experimental spaces that really push what we understand puppets as, not just the Henson mold. So,
Right.
some very exciting work there. And at one point, she and I were talking with each other, and I said, "Wow, here working at Sesame Street, this must be the best job in the world."
Right.
And she was like, "It's nice." She said, "But it's 3 months of my life." And I kind of understood that, but it never really
Because
clicked.
there's not
Like,
enough work because they only film and then they're
because
done.
they do 26 episodes a year,
Got it.
and then unless you're, Elmo or Big Bird or one of the main characters that then has like a press schedule,
Right.
you
Shows.
just go back to, doing other things. And some folks are actors, some folks are teachers or performers, they do other things. And so one of the things that Pam told me about was this puppetry conference, and that the window had already passed for me to apply that year, but within the year I was at signed up for my first O'Neill,
Excellent.
and that was a huge. I mean, just the people you meet in that
Right.
community, the work that is created and devised and shared, it has become such a huge part of who I am, and who I know and how I work, and all those things.
Have you been to the National Center for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta?
I have not. No, and I've gotten close. I years ago, maybe 2016 or 17, 2016, I filmed a short film in Atlanta. I was down there for 4 days, and but we were so far away from the center
Right.
that I just couldn't make it work. I have been to the Ballard Institute in that's right by UConn at the University of Connecticut, and they have an incredible puppet theater. The Museum of Moving Images in
Nice.
Astoria, New York, has a wonderful Henson exhibit. And believe it or not, the Strong Museum, just a stone's
In
throw in
Rochester.
Rochester, has a number of puppets, including some poser puppets from Sesame Street that are posed and sort of angled, and it's always a delight
Pretty
to
fun.
see those guys in person.
The man who started the museum in Atlanta, I got to interview him on my
Mm,
64 More tour. I want to say, I can't remember his name right offhand, but
yeah, oh gosh, I
there were a lot of Muppets. There
Vincent,
were a
I
lot of
think.
original because he worked with Jim. I mean, he was like his right hand
Yes,
man. So it was a fascinating place if you get a chance to go back. But moving
I
on,
would
we have
love.
so much more to talk about, and I don't want to run out of time. So,
Sure. And I'm sorry, I could be long-winded on
no,
things.
that's okay. Don't worry. We'll keep moving. So you get all this experience and you get settled and you start doing your puppetry thing and you go to Damon for college and so on and so forth. How do you get set or hooked up in the 48-hour film project?
Sure. So, just about any of my story in puppetry after after you and I met was my partnership with Adam Krutinger,
Mhm.
the late great Adam Krutinger, who just was this incredibly talented puppet builder and theater maker who just happened to live like 20 minutes from me. And we met because a mutual friend like met both of us in college and said, "Oh my gosh, you two need to know each other yesterday." And so we met at a spot coffee and he brought two garbage bags, black garbage bags full of puppets, and we sat in a corner at spot coffee and talked until, 11 o'clock. Back in the days when Spot would be open until midnight. But we would just talk about puppets and how he built this and how I built that. And I had all sorts of pictures because I'm an encyclopedia when it comes to Muppet history, and I'd be able to show him like, oh yeah, in this doc they explain how this mechanism is done or what this building technique is, or and the way we were able to just pool our collective resources was incredible.
You were
And
the yin and
so
yang. You were each other's yin and yang, it sounds like.
very, very, very much so. And it's funny because I really have not built much in the last 14 years or so because Adam always did that. And I was able to just lean on him and I was able to focus on the things that I was really strong at, which was the directing and the writing and the performing. And we were able to, again, like focus on our strengths. But that has made me a very lazy puppet builder.
So
Anyhow,
how do we get to 48 hours?
yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
So, probably midway through our working relationship together, we got asked by another Buffalo filmmaker, "Hey, I'd like to have a puppet in one of my 48s." And we had kind of heard of it, but we had never done it before. And that filmmaker, um, he won't mind me saying this out of school now, but he had his whole thing prepared ahead of time. He knew what story he wanted to tell. He had everything.
Well, in the
Um,
very beginning, you could do that. In the very because I had some experience with some people in the very beginning, you could bring a project. It's not like it is now where you have to pull something out of your.
sure, fair enough. And I think at the time he was still kind of breaking some rules, but it was fine. Um, but all that to say, it really made Adam and me say, well, let's do this again, but follow the rules. And we just instantly fell in love with the process of being able to create something. You have, 48 hours where you're essentially locked in a room and you say, let's get it done, and everyone else in your life knows that it's the priority of that weekend. You can't say like, "Oh, I've got this work thing," or "Oh, I got to be like," no, we're going to make this thing and it's going to be painful and Monday's going to suck, but we're going to do it. And our first one was not very good. And he and I did probably 5 or 6 of them together.
Okay. What year was your first one?
So our very first one was in 2013.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
it was in December 2013. It was for a holiday 48. That was the one that we were asked to help out on. And then that following summer in 2014 was the first year that we did it ourselves.
And have you done them every year?
Just about. So since 2014, I've done I think this year is going to be my 10th Buffalo 48.
Okay. And what's the gigabytes? Is that a new group? Is that something you've just formed?
So 38 gigabytes is our just our team name,
Mhm.
and I haven't made it a formal studio. Possibly at some point I will. The 38 gigabytes is actually it's a very silly reference to a movie from my childhood called Honey, We Blew Up the Kid.
Sure.
And there's a scene where the bad guy is upset because the good guy's destroyed his laboratory and he's, shaking his fist at the heavens that his whole data center has been destroyed and 38 gigabytes of are gone forever. And at the time it sounded like, a ginormous amount of data because it was. And now you watch it with 2022 glasses whenever I rewatched it and was like, oh, that's very funny. And what a testament to like what what is scale and how do things change over time
Right.
and
How
what
things
what
change.
remains important and all those things. And it just represented something so poetic that
You
me
stayed.
and some of our fellow friends said, let's just go with 38 gigabytes. And so we've done that for the last since 2022.
So give us a 30-second summary of the plot of something there. And when we say it's a short film, how long does it run?
Runs approximately 8 minutes long, so you could definitely power through it very, very easily. And the story is about it's a mockumentary. So if you've
A
watched
mockumentary? Did you make that up?
No, no, no. That's the what the industry term for
That's the
a
genre.
fictional documentary. And so if you've watched The Office or Parks and Rec, there's a lot of wonderful sitcoms out there. Certainly most of the Christopher Guest films are mockumentaries. And ours is about a suit performer, a puppet suit performer at
Okay, you
a
need to explain that term to people because if they haven't seen the movie, they're not going to understand what that means.
fair enough. So if you think of a suit puppet is a character like Big Bird or Bear from Bear in the Big Blue House, a puppet where that is essentially a costume that you can't see the puppeteer at all. They're fully inside of it. And so my character, Ben, plays a park puppeteer. So like at a Disney World, or we were it was a send up to Sesame Place, which is the Sesame Street theme park. And my character, who works inside of this suit, develops a crush on the woman who is his tour guide, his handler, to make sure that he doesn't fall off a stage or walk into a wall or any, we're used to seeing it at any kind of mascot is accompanied by someone, usually a young kid, to keep them in line. And the inspiration for the film was just, oh, what if someone inside the suit caught feelings for the person on the outside, and but they didn't know what the other looked like, or they had that veil of anonymity.
So you make the film, you put it all together and you make it, and you referenced a few minutes ago, it's very stressful, you're exhausted, you're grumpy on Monday. Was the process of making this particular film like that, or was there something different about
Oh
this
yeah.
one?
So every year there's a lot that is the same and there's a lot that's different because there's always different technical things that come up. I felt very prepared for this year. I happen to be I just wrapped up my master's at Damon actually, and in their leadership and innovation program, and I was specifically taking a course about change theory and ways. I was specifically studying appreciative inquiry as a model for improving projects and becoming more productive. And so I made my grad school project the prep work for whatever this year's 48 was going to be.
Okay.
So, and that just like people management, right? It's like creating a schedule for like if we need to run to Target for a supply run, who's free, who has a car, what are food allergies, who are people's emergency
You're
contacts?
basically
Like
being a mom, is what
I'm
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 hearing.
absolutely being a mom. Yes,
Shout out to the moms
1000%.
of the world. Yes, thank you very
We're
much.
scheduling. Part of it
Yep.
was also like send us the song that like charges you up, like brings you some energy that we could blast first thing on Saturday morning as people are getting to set. And so we
So
had a team playlist. So it's team building.
but in building this particular film, was it
Mhm.
more or less stressful or about the same as all the others? Was there any big difference in the way it came together?
The big difference this year was that I was doing it that we had this full-bodied character,
And you've
which
never
was the
been on screen in a costume before in these?
no, I had not.
Oh, wow. Did you think
Yes.
twice about it?
Not really. No. So I've always because Big Bird has always been my favorite character on Sesame Street and in the Muppets in general. And because I loved that illusion as I was talking about before, where he could walk down the grocery store aisle and you would not see a puppeteer in it
Right.
at all. I loved the beauty of that illusion. And so I so desperately wanted to do this. I can never talk Adam into making a full-bodied costume where you didn't see the
Okay.
puppeteer. And so I outsourced the work to another good friend of mine, Richard Michael Gomez, who's a tremendously talented puppeteer and puppet builder and works with the Jim Henson Company and Monkey Boys that does work for SNL and all sorts of other things. And I gave him the challenge of, hey, do you think you could make this based off of a project sketch? And he said, yeah, let me do my best. So this is Crowley, and you could see he has sort of a hooping system that allows me to like not have the fur right up against my person. And what we did was, and how I was able to see out was our director of photography had an app for his camera that allowed us all to have playback monitors. So we were able to get the picture that he was getting on his camera on this iPad. From there, I had this screen can receive Bluetooth from a smartphone. So I was able to have this mirroring my smartphone, which you can see in front of the iPad. And then I strapped this little TV monitor to my chest with just a belt. And I was able to look out and see my performance. Because that's the only way that puppeteers ever work is to we're seeing the final picture that people see at home so that we could be properly lined up in the frame and the puppets looking at the camera and all that kind of stuff.
That's amazing. There you
Here you
are.
could see like because the puppet stands probably about 6.5 to 7 feet tall. We never measured it, but you could see this is a scene where I took the puppet off, and you could see how it can kind of just drape flat because it's like a big wedding dress,
And that's the
basically.
girl that you kind of wanted to like, and she had no idea who you were in there.
That's
It's a
right.
great movie. Real quick, Cam, because we do have to keep moving, but does
Hmm.
anybody have any questions for Cam? Please ask them. Okay, you can always put them in the chat, and I'm sure you can find Cam is on LinkedIn and on Facebook, so you can always find him there as well. Cam, real quick, I can't, I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many things we could have done an hour with each you and Sarah individually, but um, I have to ask you, do you think you're an inspiration to young filmmakers? Do you feel that that is part of who you are now?
Uh, I don't know. Because you never know how you affect people. Best I could say is that I think about my younger self that was watching this stuff and had no idea that this was an accessible thing. And I think that if he was able to watch the stuff that I do and see the puppets that I play with, that he would be very proud. So I think that's kind of my best meter for any of this. I want to share real quick while my screen is still sharing. So
Sure.
this is a photo of me probably circa 1992 or so. And You could see already
Big
I
Bird.
was indoctrinated into the Birdketeers, and when we needed to show a moment in something there that showed that my character Ben had always grown up loving Crowley, that monster, I doctored the photo so so you could see how that love of Big Bird was able to be
Very
turned
good.
into the love for Crowley.
Cam, do you have a dream about your career that you maybe haven't really admitted to anybody yet, but you might share with us tonight?
I would really love just to be able to keep doing these things with my friends and not go into bankruptcy. As much as I would love to say, like, oh yeah, work with the Muppets or work with Sesame Street, like that's great. But between this, something there that I think is hopefully going to turn into some kind of TV show. I'm working on a show Bible right now, and another film that we did a few years ago that I'm pretty sure is going to become a feature. I would just love to be able to make those and do it with the people who have gotten me here to this point so far.
Well, Cam,
Um,
thank you. I'm so
yeah,
glad that I got to tell your story in your early years of your career, and I'm honored to watch you succeed in ways that inspire all who know you. So continued success with something there. And please come back. Will you go to con? Will you be able to go?
working on it right now. Getting things put together, but definitely have my fingers crossed for it.
Fingers
So
I have a
crossed. And please,
question.
please
Oh,
come
sorry.
back after con and tell us how it went.
certainly.
So would you be up for an Academy Award, knocking on wood, if your team won? Because I feel like the short film festival, you could be potentially up for the Academy if you.
I don't quite know how that works. I think we would need to like submit for Academy accreditation and all sorts of things. And when we are screening at the short film corner at Con, there's no competition element to it. It
I
is
see.
very much a showcase. Um, that said, I think there will be people there looking to, acquire for either distribution or development or all these sorts of things. And
Yeah.
Olivia and I are right now kind of getting prepared to be able to share with people some of the ideas that we have.
Oh, that's exciting. Cool.
Yeah.
We're gonna share this, save this video and say we knew you when, Cam. Thank you so much and best of
Thank
luck.
you.
All right.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christina.
So now our second guest tonight is another creatively successful film storyteller who I met as a teenager.
Mhm.
She lived down the road from my Crown Hill farm, and the day she came to chat while I was working in the barn, I was writing a newspaper column at the time, and she told me that she wanted to go to college and write as well. As a freelance writer, I understood the challenges of the industry, and I remember silently thinking, oh, sister, good luck with that. But like Cam, Sarah was determined and did exactly as she planned. She went to college and was hired to write a regular newspaper column while still a student. And after graduation, traveled East Coast to West, learning, writing, and connecting with other talented people. She moved on writing poems, essays, plays, and screenplays. And then she discovered filmmaking. In 2019, Sarah wrote and directed a short film called My Name Is. 2022, she wrote and directed the feature film A Stage of Twilight. And she also co-wrote and directed a feature film, Life After You. Then this year, she has brought out her feature film that she co-wrote and directed, Cry Baby Bridge, which is receiving great response and reviews. So I am pleased to welcome the talented Sarah Schwab to Heart and Soul.
Thank you for having me, Christina. It's nice to you. I still remember being 14-year-old, talking to you in your barn,
Yeah,
while you're feeding the horses, and I was just like, oh, this is so cool.
it was a memorable moment for both of us, clearly. So you
Yeah.
started as a writer, newspaper columns, poems, essays, then on to plays and screenplays. Now you're directing and producing films.
Mhm.
Do you have a favorite out of any of those storytelling mediums over another, or is it just telling the story regardless?
I think right now it would be filmmaking in general, just because there's an emotional attachment to that feeling, and also I just have been doing it for so long, and I kind of know the formula now, and I know that industry very well. So the emotional element is I had a very good friend named Nicholas Lavelle, who died in a car accident when he was 34 years old in, when was that? 2015. He was we were boyfriend and girlfriend for 3 years, and that happened. And he was a cinematographer, and he was obsessed with like the Spielbergs, all the people, and he would give me a list of homework of movies I had to watch. And so I fell in love with film through his eyes. And then when he died in 2015, I was already I was transitioning into the theater world in New York City. And I had met an actress named Karen Allen, who many might know from Raiders of the Lost Ark. She played Marion Ravenwood. A lot of people might know her from Animal House, that movie too. So she and I had become friends, and I had been working on a play. And she was working on her first short film screenplay that she wanted to direct in 2016. And she invited me to come on board and my producing partner to come on board to produce, to help in any way we can. And so that was my first experience on a set a year after my friend died. And I loved it. I worked under the tutelage of Oscar-nominated production designer Christy Zia, who did Goodfellas, Silence of the Lambs. After that moment in 2016, after all the other writing I had done, I'm like, oh, this is it. I'm doing this. And so I wrote My Name Is, um, gained the money, raised the money to do it, wore like 5 different hats on that shoot, got it done, got into a bunch of film festivals, and then the next year someone picked me up as a director, and it just kind of, went that way.
And your movies have won awards. I mean, it's not as if you're just churning out movies. You're churning out movies that people appreciate and are honoring,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah.
awesome, Sarah.
Yeah, that's why I asked Cam about the Academy consideration, because we went to Bermuda and we went to, I forget the other Academy award qualifying festival, but we went to both of those two festivals, and if you won, then you got put into the pool with all the other short films. We didn't get that, unfortunately, but yeah, so I
But good
think
to
that
know.
doing the feature is probably, filmmaking is my favorite.
So, Sarah, before we get into Crybaby Bridge, which I want to make sure we leave plenty of time to talk about that, I've seen almost I haven't seen Crybaby Bridge, but I've seen your other movies, and we've had this conversation in the past. Your projects tend to portray what I would call the dark side of life. However, you term your films complex rather than dark. So I want you to, in your own words, explain to me the difference between those two. And then where do you get the inspiration for films that are so complex?
I think this stems from my interest in journalism and listening to people's stories. I really I really like to get to know people on not just a surface level, but on a deeper level,
Mhm.
and with their permission to tell their story. And so I think I do more of the more complex slash darker themes is because when people feel that they can trust you with their story, they go layers deeper. And I think most human beings, have wells of depth and are either too afraid to explore them or don't know how to safely do that and come back the other side. And so it's in those stories that a lot of people are either afraid to tell or don't know how to tell. I like to be a conduit, in some way to tell those more complex stories. So Life After You was based on a true story about a family who lost their 19-year-old son to a heroin overdose that was laced with fentanyl. So we worked with the family, and we got their approval, which was very nerve-wracking. We still are on a mission to talk about addiction awareness and just what happened through that movie. And we're doing well with that. And then our second feature, A Stage of Twilight, that starred Karen Allen and a great actor named William Sadler, uh, is loosely based on the death of my dad, and just end of life talks and choices. So that was a very personal story for me. But I also think that that's an important subject that people don't want to talk about. They don't want to talk about something
Well,
that,
it's painful, right? And
yeah,
hard.
it's inevitable, and but it's like, you don't have to talk about it all day, all the time, but it's probably good to talk a little bit with a few people just so people are aware. And so again, it's that awareness, and that transparency with compassion,
You're
that I
you're
care
allowing
about.
us a glimpse into what the future holds, regardless of how the person you love passes or yourself, how you're going to pass. So in that respect, I can understand exactly what you're saying and allowing people to have that a clearer understanding based on a story that someone else, of someone else's life that they share.
Well, helpful is exactly our goal with those stories. We've always done Q&As for most of our after our screenings, question and answer periods with the audience. And it's beautiful how many people feel safe to comment about things they probably can't comment about in other circles, and building a sense of community, a safety net where there are people that feel those things, that you feel
Yes,
like you're not a weirdo and
you're not alone.
you're not alone.
You're not alone. Yeah.
That's
Does
actually
anybody
a
in our
bright thing. It's not dark, it's bright.
Well, in that context, exactly. It's the exact opposite of a dark film. It's a film that invites engagement. And I think sometimes when you just talked about people being uncomfortable, sometimes it's not only that they're uncomfortable, but they're ashamed or they're afraid and they don't, and no one has ever encouraged them or asked them to tell. And
Yeah.
that's what you're doing with these movies. And that's a really important part of what you do. Does anybody have any questions for Sarah at this point? Because I want to make sure you get to ask them. Lori, this is your big chance.
I knew she was going to call it. This is my mom, by the way.
Yeah,
Anybody who didn't know, this is my
right.
mom.
It's me.
Okay.
No questions.
And you're welcome to, chime in anytime. So, Sarah, on Crybaby Bridge, which is your newest film, it's inspired by folklore, urban legends surrounding numerous bridges across the United States and even around the world that are supposedly connected to a tragic backstory or event that occurred on or near the bridge. When talking about the filming of this movie in interviews you've given, you've stated that you kept parts of the script intentionally flexible so that the actors could bring in their own emotional experiences. And I love that defined it this way, their secrets into the film. Because I think this goes back to the whole conversation we just had of people being afraid or ashamed to tell some of these things about themselves or their lives. And so what I want to know from you is how does it play out when you keep the script flexible and you're watching, you're filming a scene and you're watching it as the director, and all of a sudden, one of your actors starts going into something that is not in your script and certainly hasn't been anything that you've discussed with them, but you can feel that it's something really personal and intentional on their part. And when you see that happen, do you just allow it to happen and take your chances and see what happens? Do you allow it to happen and when they're done, talk about it with them and even reshoot the scene? I mean, has that been your experience, or am I surmising what might happen?
With every film that we have done, we've gotten really incredible actors to be part of our films who are much more seasoned, and they just know a lot about how to film, how to where the camera goes and the dialogue, how to make it more fast-paced and natural sounding. So the structure is always intact, and the beats of the structure of screenwriting are always intact. But what I do beforehand with the actors is I try to do a full table read at least once and hear everybody's suggestions about if it should be said a different way, or if we could lose this whole thing and I can just emote it through their face or through actions. I listen to that, and as long as that beat, that story beat, is still in place, then I'm like, yeah, do it. Do be more natural and authentic to you. I try not to do that while we're shooting. It does happen because on an indie budget, you just don't have time for reshoots. You
Mhm.
do two or three, And then it's like, all right, next scene, lighting up.
You'll make the best of it in editing, right?
Yeah, you try not to do that, but yes, it's you want the most, so usually you get the dialogue right beforehand. If an actor does something different the first take and it sounds good and it was different, for continuity purposes, they have to do the same thing over and over and over again. So it's really in their best interest to like, if they're going to do it that way, just keep it the same.
Right.
Then editing is not such a problem. So it's a disciplined structure, but it also allows a lot of communication between the director and the actors as well.
Has it been a surprise to you how much you didn't know? Now that you've done these films and you've learned so much?
Oh yeah, I still don't know anything. I mean, I'm just like, I mean, I'm gonna be 80 years old hopefully, and still be learning from the best and the better. That's the beautiful thing about filmmaking is that it's a constant, ability to learn with just different talent, with
Right.
technology, which I'm not great at, but I know people that are really good at it, and we figure out how to use their zero and ones and communicate them into Sarah Schwab English, which is
You have either written or co-written everything you filmed, correct?
yes, so far.
And is that no, is that a deal breaker for you? Like, would you do someone else's work?
Yeah, we're in not pre-production, but development mode for three other films that I have not written, that we are helping other directors and writers do. The
Produce.
next one produce, yeah. The next film that we are going to be shooting in October and fall of this year in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is weirdly very similar to Buffalo, in a lot of ways. That one I did write, and I'm going to be directing as well. But after that, I'm probably going to take a little bit of a hiatus and just support other filmmakers while just doing more writing of my own.
Support them by trying to produce their movies, get their movies produced. Okay. You're getting some great reviews and ratings for Crybaby Bridge, and you have won awards for your previous films. Do those things matter to you, Sarah?
Accolades are great. They help. They help give you credit and like what Cam said, I want a roof over my head. I want to eat food and I don't want to be worrying about my bills 24/7. So it helps give you some sort of credibility, which brings investors and all the other good stuff. Personally, they're beautiful and I'm a very appreciative. I just really want to be able to do the thing I love and is to tell story. And if I can do that and it doesn't come with an award, it's cool.
There was a girl who lived in this area.
What's going on?
Apparently, a man threw his wife and newborn off a bridge.
It wasn't long before she got pregnant. Her father threw her out and told her to never come back.
Don't forget why we're on this little adventure in the first place.
Starving and cold, she took her baby to a nearby bridge.
I can't believe we're doing this. I've never not lived in the city.
It said that if you go to that bridge, the vengeful ghost will kill you and your...
What happened at that school wasn't your fault. You know that, right?
I don't care what they have to say about me.
Does what you're thinking about have anything to do with your being adopted? Because
I really don't feel like having a therapy session.
What were you doing out there?
I thought I heard something.
You shouldn't be out here by yourself. Let me drive you back.
I didn't realize it was him.
Oh, that's great. Our pregnant daughter driving around with a man who likes to kill women and children.
Why are you researching him?
Good question.
I'm not gonna let anyone hurt our family.
could you just give us a thumbnail of the plot, please, so people can have an idea of what they just saw?
So the folklore of Crybaby Bridge is a legend in the United States, and it's pretty much in every state has their own legend what happened, but they all stem around a young unwed woman, pregnant woman, who's abandoned by her lover and disowned by her family, and they go to a nearby bridge and they end their suffering. You can also see this in South American legends with La Llorona, which has a very similar take, and there are other countries that also have that. So I wanted to take that general idea of a folklore, Crybaby Bridge, and modernize it to something that we could see possibly happening today, with young people and being bullied and all the other stuff going on, being adopted. And so some folklore might be more than legend. And I really wanted with this movie to ask the question, if the monster is this ghostly spirit on the outside, or if the monster is coming from within this emotionally turbulent young person. Does that make sense to everybody? So yeah, so or are they one of the same? Is it external or internal? Is she creating the monster because of her psychological issues? So that's
So
what I
if you could tell people one thing about the Crybaby Bridge movie, what would be the most important thing for you to share and why?
I hope you like it. It was my first attempt as a psychological thriller. There's a heavy dose of family drama still in there. Um, but I would really hope that people take away what I just said. I want them to leave questioning, was she being haunted by an external force, or was she manifesting, something sinister from within? And that's what I would like people to take away from the movie.
Okay, one last chance. Does anybody have any questions for Sarah?
I'm just curious in general, like how much of the process for you of choosing what story you're gonna write and develop is based on being excited about characters, by a certain theme, by the ideas of like a modern folklore, or the ideas that all towns have their own, personal backlore. Like what excites you enough to the point where you start putting pen to paper?
I have about 1 billion ideas, so that kind of stinks. So there's a lot of ideas. I guess it's like throwing spaghetti on the wall with our investors and kind of what's going on in the film world, what distribution companies are really looking for in the market, and evaluating all those things, and then going through my idea list. And some of them are half written, some of them are just ideas with characters, but pulling from that and being like, okay, I'm going to spend 6 months solidifying this script. I'm going to go to XYZ with it, in terms of actors, cast, investors, distribution companies. And if it gets a good response, then I know that that's the one that I'm willing to spend the next 4 or 5 years of my life working on.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind
Great
of
question, Kim.
it's
Thank you.
creative and marketing. So
Right?
Totally.
You cannot create without selling. That's the double-edged sword, right? Okay, Sarah, I have to ask you this question, and we're over time, but I hope everyone indulges. This is for your mom and me. In a recent interview, you said that you're actively working to bring more levity into your writing.
mm.
I want to know, how does that happen? And what does that mean? Like, how are you bringing levity into your writing? What does that entail? Because your nature is serious and investigative and wanting to tell the deeper stories.
Yeah, I think it was Tennessee Williams, the playwright Tennessee Williams. I think it was him. He said, get him laughing, in the first act, get him totally disoriented and create really interesting characters that even if they're not funny, you like lean in and you're like, what's that all about? So levity doesn't necessarily mean like funny, or light. It kind of means light, but I want to start on a lighter note, to bring people into the fold, sooner, and have a slow burn by placing breadcrumbs of, uncomfortable moments, so that people are slowly following that trail, but it's not crazy enough for them to think that something bad is going to happen. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's
Yeah,
hard.
absolutely. Absolutely, it does.
But so the levity for me is to slowly bring people into the fold, and by the time that you pull the rug from underneath them, they feel like they've walked right into it. So that's not really light, is it?
So I will not be seeing Sarah T. Schwab under any Hallmark movies coming up in the near future.
If they hire me, I am so game, and I will listen to everything that they want me to do.
All right. Well, Lori, there's hope for her yet. And we're just teasing, Sarah. We both admire you. I mean, your mom loves you, but we do talk about your work every time we're together. And it's like, how does she write that stuff? It's so hard. But I understand more clearly now that you're doing it from a perspective of not the hard story, but that life is hard. And to try to tell those stories in ways that people can relate helps. So thank you for that clarification tonight, because you educated me, and that's a good thing. It's always good to learn.
Well, it's really cool because there are so many different ways of telling story. Like the way Cam tells story. I haven't seen any of your films yet, but there can be, in Sesame Street, there's a lot of deep, complex stuff
Right.
in those episodes, even though they're puppets, they're puppets. I don't know which one I'm supposed to say, puppets. But there's a lot of complex stuff there too. And so
Sure.
just the way you prefer to share it, I think is, yeah, different ways.
And the thing I remember, you're way too young, but when Sesame Street first started, they had interracial couples. They had talk about death. They did all kinds of things that had never been done in children's programming before. And so you're absolutely right, Sarah. There's many different ways to, slice that story. And you and Cam are the perfect example of that. You're both so successful in what you're doing. You're both focused on it from the start, as young as I knew you, and yet very different paths. So it's been so much fun having both of you tonight. Thank you. I feel like
Thank you.
certainly not a mentor, but someone who has been in and out of your lives through from when you were young to now, all the success. And it really is an honor to watch you bloom and blossom and change the world with the storytelling you're doing. So best of luck to both of you. And
Thank
before I forget, Crybaby Bridge, if you want to watch it, it's available on Fandango at home. It's also available on Amazon Prime and on Vimeo. And Cam, your whole short is available on YouTube.
That's right. Yes, and if you go, we linked it in the chat, but you could also go to camgarrity.com, and my work is there as well.
Again, thank you for everybody who came, and it's been recorded. We're going to put it on my YouTube channel so more people can watch it. If you found that this information tonight was interesting and other people might enjoy it, feel free to share that link to the video. I think this was a really meaningful conversation from two young filmmakers. And so thank you, Cam and Sarah. And thank you for joining me in this Heart and Soul podcast. I hope our conversation stays with you, inspires you, and brings you back again to this special place where people, words, and stories matter. Until then, take care. Talk soon.